So Lee Jae-myung is currently in Europe, and then so he visited the Vatican and he met with the Pope. And so let's play this segment real quickly. Lee Jae-myung's with the Pope.
President Lee Jae-myung and First Lady Kim Hye-kyung have arrived at the Apostolic Palace. The
Apostolic Palace. Apostolic Palace.
For the first time since taking office and invited him to visit Korea.
2027년 서울 세계 청년 대회의 성공적인 개최를 위해서 긴밀히 협력해 나가기로.
The meeting lasted about half an hour. President Lee conveyed the Korean people's wish for lasting peace on the Korean peninsula. He and Pope Leo agreed that cooperation, reconciliation and dialogue are necessary even though inter-Korean relations are strained at this point.
See you in Korea. Very good.
At an ensuing meeting, President Lee and the Cardinal Secretary of State discussed the possibility of a papal visit to North Korea. Regarding inter-Korean relations, President Lee quoted the famous verse from the Bible, "Knock and the door will be open to you." He said he will continue trying, although patience is needed. The Vatican responded by saying that not only patience but hope is also needed. The President gifted the Pope with the Embrace of God sculpture. Cheongwade says it depicts the story of the prodigal son and symbolizes compassion for humanity, forgiveness, reconciliation, and the restoration of community. On Tuesday, President Lee is set to begin his official schedule at the G7 summit in Evian, France. Eyes are on whether he will meet with US President Donald Trump at the event.
All right, so we all saw that. There's a lot of things I want to say about that, but one thing I do want to say about that is that I just hate the whole... I hate when liberals do this thing with the Bible where they completely misapply it. It's just absolute terrible biblical hermeneutics. When Jesus says knock and the door will be open, ask and you shall receive, he's talking about salvation. It's a soteriological point. It's a salvific thing. It's not, oh, I will knock and the door will be open and then we'll be able to talk to Kim Jong-un. Like, what are you doing? Like, they do this thing. They do this thing with Micah 6:8, right? Seek justice. Oh, therefore, love mercy. Oh, therefore, that we must support BLM. Huh? How does that chart? what does Micah 6:8 and us seeking justice have to do with supporting an avowedly Marxist black grievance organization that lies to you and literally steals your money? Like, well, where's the connection there? They do the same thing with Galatians 3. There's neither Jew nor Greek, male nor female. We're all one in Christ Jesus. Therefore, you must be pro-transgenderism because there's neither male or female. What? No. They just literally use Bible verses for whatever context that they want. It's like, no, like you don't take scripture and you shove it into whatever you want to say. You look at scripture in its entirety, what the original authors meant, what God is trying to say, and then you apply that to whatever it is that you're viewing in terms of cultural issues, the world. So you're not supposed to take what Jesus said about salvation and apply it to geopolitics on the Korean peninsula. That doesn't really chart. So I don't like when they do that. I think that prodigal son gift was kind of nice, but it's kind of funny. You notice Lee Jae-myung, he's not very good at English. And so he's not a good negotiator. He's not strong on the world stage because the lingua franca is English. And if a world leader cannot speak English well, yeah, they just inherently are viewed as weak. That's just unfortunate. And as someone who, yes, I agree that Koreans should use less English in their branding and in their everyday vocabulary, having your leader know English and be able to communicate in English well is a must. It's a must because it is through communications that you establish diplomatic relations, you pass trade deals, treaties, peace agreements. Communication. And so if you cannot communicate on the world stage, yeah, you're going to be seen as weak. That's why you see all the footage of Lee Jae-myung at these global summits. I think it was the G7 summit recently, or last year. He was just standing there. He was just like looking around because no one was talking to him because he can't speak in English. He can't communicate. He's so bad. He needs a translator everywhere he goes. That's the same thing with Hwan Kyo-an, who is the leader of the Freedom and Innovation Party that just launched this past year in Korea. And I don't like what he's doing because he's fracturing the base and he is taking votes away from the People Power Party, which is the only bulwark against left-wing domination throughout the entire Korean country. But he too cannot speak a lick of English. He always needs a translator. So that when he goes to CPAC or goes to America, he just needs a translator all the time. It's like, no, like you should be able to speak English as a leader if you're trying to represent Korea on the world stage. That's why the strongest leaders all know English. Now, you might say, oh, but Xi Jinping doesn't know English. Yeah, China's different. Okay, China literally has 1.4 billion people. They have so much economic leverage as well because most of America's manufacturing happens in China. That's a whole different thing. And plus, he's basically a king in China. And they're also a global superpower. But if you want to get to that point, I do believe that you have to, especially with matters like this, you have to be able to speak English. Now, that being said, here's an article that I want to talk about. So Jae-myung he actually gave a speech during Mass at the Vatican now, in Rome. And I find that to be, I don't know how I feel about that. Of course, I am not against world leaders or politicians coming and giving a few remarks in a church service. But this is Mass. Like, this is different. Catholic Mass is a lot more reverent than the normal, typical evangelical Protestant worship service. And so having Jae-myung give remarks and give a speech, it wasn't just like remarks, but it was a speech during Holy Mass where Catholics celebrate and worship Christ. A little strange. On top of that, he's not even Catholic. He's Protestant. Of course, we all know that's not true, but he's Protestant. He says he's Christian. So I find this to be distasteful. That being said, he talked about the Ember of Hope of dialogue with North Korea. He's saying that, we need to achieve peace in North Korea. So this is him speaking at the Mass in the Basilica of St. Paul outside the walls of Rome. And so let's just read this a little bit here. So Lee Jae-myung reaffirmed his commitment to establishing a lasting peace on the Korean peninsula on Sunday, saying that the ember of hope for dialogue and cooperation with Pyongyang still exists. Lee made the remarks during a speech at a special mass held at the Basilica of St. Paul outside the walls in Rome, celebrated by South Korea-born Cardinal Lazaro Yu Hung-shik, probably. And that's English. I don't know what it is in Korean, but probably Hung-shik. Yu Hung-shik. He is visiting Italy as part of his first European trip since taking office in June last year. Lee is scheduled to visit the Holy See for an audience with Pope Leo XIV on Monday. The remarks came ahead of the 26th anniversary of the June 15 North-South Joint Declaration, calling a historical event. Keep going down. A new door of hope for peace on the Korean peninsula was opened. Lee said, "I am convinced that the ember of hope is still alive." Lee has pursued a series of confidence-building measures aimed at easing tension with the North since taking office in June last year. In his speech, he cited steps such as restricting activist groups from sending anti-North Korean propaganda leaflets across the border and suspending loudspeaker broadcasts aimed at the North. Lee also reiterated that Seoul does not seek absorption, unification, or unilateral competition between the two systems. In order to establish a sustainable peace system, I intend to do everything I can. North Korea has shown little interest in Seoul's overtures and recently revised its constitution to remove references to reunification with South Korea. Pyongyang has also continued to develop its nuclear and ballistic missile programs in the face of international sanctions and calls for denuclearization. Last week, Lee and the leaders of the EU issued a joint statement condemning North Korea's military cooperation with Russia and expressing grave concern over Pyongyang's nuclear and ballistic missile programs. Seoul and Washington also reaffirmed the shared goal of denuclearizing North Korea at a meeting of the bilateral nuclear consultative group on Thursday in Seoul. On Sunday, the North's foreign ministry rejected the idea of denuclearization, calling it an issue that has been finally and irreversibly concluded. Lee is also slated to attend the G7 Group of Seven summit in France, which runs from Monday through Wednesday. Okay, so lots to say there. So essentially, what we have is right now, Lee Jae-myung enlisting the aid of the Pope Leo XIV, in hopes of helping to reunify the two Koreas, or not even reunify, but have peace talks with the two Koreas. Now, a few things. One, Christianity is growing in North Korea, and increasingly there are churches that are allowed to worship, but the Catholic Church in Korea is not submitted to Rome. And so Rome doesn't actually hold much leverage over North Korea, very much. Now, Lee Jae-myung was saying that maybe he hopes for the Pope to visit North Korea, which would be kind of crazy And I know that he holds a lot of soft power because as the Pope and as the leader of the Catholic Church, where there's like 2 billion Catholics in the world, yeah, he holds a lot of power because there's a lot of people who submit to him as the proposed vicar of Christ and the leader of the Catholic Church. But in North Korea specifically, yeah, it won't really, I don't think it's going to sway as much. And on top of that, the Pope doesn't hold much political power and sway. Most of what the Pope does truly on the world stage is just kind of pontificate about world affairs and say, we should love, we should have compassion, we should seek peace. War is bad. It's like, okay, Holy Father, we get it. But it doesn't really change much because most countries aren't submitted truly to Rome anymore like they used to be. And it's funny because popes of the past, they used to be like, yeah, let's declare war and go on crusades against the Ottoman Empire and ward off all of these foreign invaders and the infidels. We will destroy them because they are an enemy of Christendom. That's the popes of the past, 500 years ago. Now, popes today, war is bad. Be compassionate. Stop deporting illegals. That's bad. And I know there might be Catholics who see that and say that that's in poor taste. But it's a reality. It's a reality. If you look at the popes of the past versus the popes of present day, yeah, it's you cannot say that they are strong. And so they don't hold much power. They don't hold much weight in world affairs anymore. And so to enlist the help of the Pope for peace talks on the Korean Peninsula, I do think it's not really a fruitful endeavor. Now, to be fair, there's a lot of Catholics in Korea, so it is obviously, I would say overall a good thing that the president of Korea goes and meets with the Pope. But what Koreans need to do is we need to reorient and kind of rethink our North Korean strategy, where the left in Korea is way too soft on North Korea with their sunshine policy, and they're like, yeah, let's give them aid and let's give them gifts, let's be nice to them so that they'll be softened. It's like, no, that's not even a concept in the minds of the Kim regime and North Korean officials. They're not thinking, wow, if they're nice to us, maybe they're not so bad. No, that's not how they're thinking. Can you wake up? The left always lives in this very real, like, idealistic dream world. That's like, as long as we're nice, we'll all get along. It's like, okay, that's not the world that we live in. That's not even moderately the headspace of Kim Jong-un. That being said, the right is, I think, to a fault and immaturely too antagonistic against North Korea. And what I mean by that is they're like, North Korea is our arch nemesis. We're still at war against them. I'm like, oh yeah, that's technically true because we still haven't signed a peace treaty and a peace agreement. We only signed an armistice. But then what's the solution to that? What's the solution? Are you gonna attack North Korea? South Korea doesn't have nukes. North Korea does. You want North Korea, the possibility of North Korea dropping a nuke on South Korea? Are you kidding me? Why? And like, so it's like, okay, let's take military action against North Korea. No, like that's suicide. That's suicide for South Korea. Because yes, possibly America sends troops to defend South Korea. But ultimately, North Korea 2 years ago signed a mutual defense pact with Russia, where if North Korea is invaded and is the defending force and the defending party, yeah, Russia will commit troops to defend and help North Korea. But that if North Korea is the aggressor, Russia says that we will not help you. And on top of that, North Korea has revised its constitution to say we have no interest in reunifying with South Korea. So right now, the head space of Kim Jong-un is internal. He just wants to develop North Korea. Like we talked about previously on this program in a previous episode, he wants to develop North Korea. His interests are not imperialistic, global. It is not to take over South Korea. It's vastly different actually from China. But if South Korea were to attack North Korea, yeah, you'd have Russia. You have to go to war against Russia, North Korea, and China, possibly. It's that you're not. Why would you do that? And no serious Korean president is gonna do that. So then what's the solution? Well, the solution is not military action to destroy North Korea, because that's not going to happen. But at the same time, there is really no threat, realistically, of North Korea invading South Korea, because they've made it very clear that they've taken out their objectives to invade South Korea. They won't invade South Korea because of their pact with Russia. So what's the solution? Well, I think the solution is a little more towards the middle, where you don't have to acquiesce. You don't have to be weak and say, oh yeah, North Korea, we'll just be nice to you. No, be strong. Be strong, be serious, be sovereign. But at the same time, yes, you should want to work towards a peace deal. That's the whole point, right? You should want a peace deal. That's one of the primary political objectives in terms of foreign policy for South Korea. You need to you need to move towards a peace deal. And then after that, try to figure out reunification. Because why? Because North Koreans, South Koreans, we are still one people. We are one Korea. We are of the same lineage and ancestry, and more. We share more history than we do apart. Most Koreans right now identify themselves when it comes to politics from the political discourse of the past 70, 80 years. But we have thousands of years of shared history. Why would you dismiss that? You cannot dismiss that. So many people who live in South Korea today are from the North or have North Korean heritage. I do. I'm half North Korean. Not that like, I came from North Korea, but like my grandparents were born and raised in North Korea, and then they fled during the Korean War. I'm half North Korean. It is part of our heritage. We should actually want a reunification of the two Koreas, not under communist rule, not acquiescing to North Korea, but that's what we should at least try to work towards, and a peace deal, a genuine peace deal. Now, how can we achieve a peace deal? Well, think about it. Imagine if Trump had a summit in North Korea. Like, imagine the balls. Like, he's the only president in American history who stepped foot in North Korea by himself. Why couldn't you do a peace summit in North Korea? But also, why couldn't you also have Russia act as a mediator for peace between the Korean Peninsula? Why does it always have to be someone else? Can't it be Russia? Of course, we want America involved, because America's America. All the peace deals and peace treaties signed throughout the world, always America's involved. For example, the Abraham Accords that happened. Because of the Abraham Accords, now there's a lot of Middle Eastern Muslim countries that are friendly, or at least not antagonistic, against Israel. Look at that. We can achieve peace. And so we have Trump involved, but why can't we also have Russia as a mediator? North Korea trusts Russia, but is Russia communist? No. Does Russia pose a threat to South Korea? No, they're actually pretty neutral. But then you think about it, even strategically and economically, South Korea imports over 70% of their oil from the Middle East through the Strait of Hormuz. First of all, why can't we import from America? It's like the same distance from over the Pacific versus getting from the Middle East through the Strait of Hormuz all the way to Korea. But you should be importing oil from America. But think about it. Russia is right there. Russia is literally right there. Why can't South Koreans and the South Korean government think about importing oil from Russia? Why can't Russia be a strategic partner economically? Of course it can. So with all those avenues, actually, Russia can serve as a mediator between North and South Korea on the Korean Peninsula, especially because North Korea trusts Russia. But you think that Jae-myung having a declaration in the EU saying, we don't like your military cooperation with Russia, you think that's going to change North Korea? You think that's going to change Kim Jong-un's mind? No. Kim Jong-un hates the West. Kim Jong-un hates Europe and Western influence. So if we should want genuine peace on the Korean Peninsula. And to achieve that, we also have to think about who can we use and who can help serve as a mediator between the two Koreas. And I do believe that Russia can. I'm so tired of the whole, Russia hoax. We saw that during the first Trump administration. And, Russian spies. Like, give me a break, dude. Like, can we move on from that? We are not in the Cold War anymore. There are different interests, different forms of governance for all these different countries, and especially for the global superpowers. We should want peace on the Korean Peninsula and by whatever means. But we should talk about this stuff, and Lee Jae-myung should be moving towards that. Instead, he's just doing a campaign in Europe, talking to the Pope and saying, Pope, please help us. It's like, he's not going to do anything, okay? The Pope doesn't opine on political matters. He just says, oh yeah, peace. War is bad. Have compassion. That's it. But he's not going to go in and be like, yeah, let's have a peace agreement. Like, no, you need political leaders to do so. You need strong political leaders. And on top of that, why Trump would be such an effective mediator on top of Russia, because North Korea trusts Russia, is because Kim Jong-un respects Russia. Kim Jong-un, yes, does respect Russia, respects Trump. And Trump himself said in interviews too that he's like, okay, I am interested in meeting Kim Jong-un again and trying to get peace on the Korean Peninsula. Can you imagine if Trump achieved peace on the Korean Peninsula? That'd be incredible. But I think a peace summit between Russia, North Korea, South Korea, and America would be highly effective. It would be highly effective. That's what we need to move towards. We need genuine policies. We need genuine solutions in order to rectify the North Korean, South Korean hostilities. So yes, they are still objectively an enemy, but we need to get peace on the Korean Peninsula. So you can't just keep saying, we hate North Korea, we hate North Korea, we hate North Korea, they're our enemy, without actually thinking about genuine solutions to move forward. No, move towards and effectuate. And that's what the People Power Party needs to do. But unfortunately, they're not. Like they have no solutions. They have no actually policy prescriptions for all of these problems, domestically and also foreign policy-wise. Now, all this being said, last thing I'll say about this is that this is just a distraction. This is a distraction from Lee Jae-myung's absolute blunder with the National Election Commission, with the ballot shortages that we've talked about. Look at this. 70.4% of Koreans are in favor of dissolving the NEC. That's insane. That's insane. Lee Jae-myung's approval ratings have plummeted. This is an absolute PR disaster for the current administration. And so what is he going to do? I want peace on the North Korean Peninsula. Let's talk to the Pope. Look how religious I am. Your solutions suck. Your solutions for peace on the Korean Peninsula with North Korea, it sucks. The DPK doesn't actually have genuine solutions. Lee Jae-myung has no solutions. He's a political dolt. He doesn't understand what it takes to be strong on the world stage and push through genuine solutions and policies that will achieve peace. He doesn't understand how North Korea thinks. This is just a distraction. This is really all distraction. And he's so glad. He is so happy that this Europe trip coincided with the ballot shortage controversy because it allows him to escape and of responsibility and absolve himself from all responsibility. That's what it is at the end of the day. That's why Korean media keeps pushing this. Oh, look how great Lee Jae-myung is in Europe. Wow, he's so nice. He's giving a speech at a holy mass and he's meeting with the Pope. Yeah, no, that's just not going to fly. People are tired. People are tired of it. We see through your lies. But all that being said, I do hope that in Korea, they're able to think about genuine solutions instead of just talking about the problems, because so much of Korean politics is defined by opposition to the other party, opposition to certain ideologies, and that's all good. That's all needed. But you need to also think about, what are you for? Like, what policies are you for? What solutions are you advocating for? What is your platform? What are actual changes you'll make in Korean society and also abroad that will help the Korean people and bolster Korean national interests? What are those solutions? Well, I don't really see much, and there's not many solutions. And even the people on the ground, they talk about, this person did that. Are you stupid? This person, I hate this person. This person needs to get out. Impeach. But they don't focus on solutions, and we need to focus on solutions. That's what I try to do on the show. I'm like, okay, here's the problem, but then here's the solution. Like, I don't want to just point out hypocrisy and problems and societal ills, but I want to show you the solution. Like I said with the LGBTQ, the solution is Christ, but it's also having pro-family policies and pro-family propaganda, truly. And they're hammering that messaging home. To have schools not teach this stuff anymore. Now, these are genuine policy solutions. For this, like, genuine policy solution for peace on the Korean Peninsula, yeah, a peace summit. Maybe enlist the aid of Russia to be a peace mediator. Like, these are all things that we should talk about and work through. Unfortunately, it's like you propose a solution, it's like they accuse you of all different kinds of names or being a spy. It's like, okay, dude. Like, do you want changed or not? Do you want solutions or not? That is my focus, and we try to do that on this show.